would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press in attendance and those who are watching the live stream of this meeting via YouTube. Minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time that the minutes are produced. Please be aware that only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream. Therefore, those invited to speak need to ensure their microphones are on when speaking and are as close to the member as possible. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, can all present keep their microphones off except when invited to speak. Please ensure that the microphone is switched off when you have finished speaking. I would also like to remind members to make sure their mobile phones are on silent or turned off for the duration of the meeting. Please be aware that the cameras will be on at all times during the meeting. There is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, an adjournment will be declared until the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. Agenda item number 1, to report any apologies for absence. Membership services, can you report any absences?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from councillors Meekins, Mockett, Scolding, Hewlett, and Councillor Wicks may be in attendance, but he may be running slightly late. Also like to report the apologies for Stephen Beecher and Sam Anthony. Thank you.
Agenda item 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting on the 4th of July 2022. Do I have a proposer to approve the minutes of this meeting? Councillor Mrs French, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mark Purser. Does any members have any comments or amendments to make on these minutes? Can I have a show of hands to approve the minutes? Thank you, members. The minutes of the meeting on the 4th of July 2022 are agreed. Agenda item 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. I believe there are none. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please raise your hands. Thank you, members. Agenda item 5 is the external audit plan. I now call upon Mark Hodgson from Ernst & Young to introduce the report.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So appreciate that our audit plan is a very long, complex document. So I'm going to focus on 3 key messages for you and happy to take questions afterwards. So the first area I'd put out are our audit risks on pages 15 to 17 of your pack. I think the key for me is the assurance to you that it's a relatively stable position from the previous year, both in terms of the number of risks and indeed the designation of them. So anything that is coloured yellow is the same risk as last year. And I think that reflects a relatively low level of risk from an audit perspective for you. But there are 2 risks that have moved or come into being this year that I will talk about a little bit more. So the first risk is around infrastructure assets, which is on page 14. This is a relatively new national issue impacting any council who holds infrastructure assets of a material nature. I'll come on to what our materiality level is in a moment. The accounting concept is that if you replace a part of an infrastructure asset, so the easiest thing to think of in my head is a pavement, for example, and it gets worn out and you have to relay the top of the pavement, you're meant to take out the cost of the original part of that pavement. And these pavements go back a whole number of years when accounting records probably didn't exist, and therefore very difficult to take out an amount that you don't know about. So many councils have just been adding on the replacement part on top, on top, on top, and therefore the balance becomes materially misstated. STIPFA, as the governing body for all UK related or England related councils, are looking at a accounting workaround, shall we say, in order to negate the issue, and that may indeed also lead to statutory override, which is parliamentary speak for a piece of legislation which says let's not follow accounting standards, let's do it a way that suits us in the UK and gets rid of the issue. As members, it will have no impact on your balance sheet bottom line, no impact on your I&E account, and no impact on your reserves, and hence doesn't really impact your way that you deliver services. But it's not in accordance with international standards of accounting and audit reporting, so clearly is an issue that auditors need to be aware of and work through. It is an issue for any audits that have not been signed up to this point, so previous years, for example, but the issue came to light after we signed your last set of accounts, so it is now a pertinent issue. So that is deemed to be a significant risk because it is material on your balance sheet at £5 million, and clearly there is a risk the accounting could be incorrect if accounting records do not support it. So that's a new risk, but on the other hand, going the other way, we have reduced the risk of COVID grants and the accounting for that from a significant risk last year to an inherent risk this year. But just as a reminder, significant risk, it's material, i.e. big on your balance sheet and likely to be incorrect. Inherent risk is material, but we don't think it's likely to be incorrect based on previous experience with you, but clearly we need to get assurance over it to be able to sign off our audit opinion. So based on last year's accounting and work that we did with you, we don't believe that it will be incorrect in the accounts, but clearly we still need to look at the grants that you've received in the year and that they have been accounted for correctly. We have, just by oversight, 2 fraud risks at the top of page 15. Those risks would appear on any public sector audit plan because we have to be alert to them. So that is not a specific risk for you here. And then the other risks we have are inherent risks as well, which when you think about the complexity of pension fund accounting and property, plant and equipment valuation accounting that Mark's been through you with in the half hour previous, then I think it's good to have an outcome of it. It's an inherent risk, it's a big number, but we think it's likely to be correct as opposed to incorrect here. So overall, I'd say relatively low audit risk for you as a council compared to a number of other councils or authorities that we are dealing with currently. In terms of materiality, because I've referenced that quite a lot in talking through the risks, our materiality level for you here is £1.15 million, and would be reporting anything to you at the end of the audit above £57,500 in terms of audit differences. So anything above 1.15 million gives us a headache in terms of our audit opinion. Would need to work through the ramifications of that if there were any. But both our audit materiality level and our testing threshold are set at the upper end of our ranges. So for you as a committee, again, that gives you assurance that we're working at the top level because in previous years your accounts have been good, so we have reliance on it, so we can go to the top end of our range for testing and assurance purposes. The third message is around value for money. We haven't identified any risks to our value for money conclusion as of yet, but we do need to go through kind of detailed work clearly as part of the audit, but I wouldn't expect there to be any coming through from that, and then we'll report through to you in December of any findings that we would have and our commentary for that. So we are all set to commence the audit in the first week of November and then come back to see you on the 19th of December with our audit results report and hopefully sign off this side of Christmas for you. But clearly that's predicated on you all being ready, and there is clearly the risk, having lost Mark's right-hand person, Neil. There is some risk to the audit because clearly your capacity is now reduced. And clearly that's quite a lot of audit queries potentially to go through one person as opposed to a team of people. So clearly we need to just ensure that we work together in the right way to be able to do that and hit the deadlines for you. So having said those 4 key messages and left Mark hanging out a little bit, I'm happy to take any questions on the plan.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the point on page 15 where you talked about these infrastructure assets. The report says it's highways infrastructure assets, and you also specifically use the example of pavements. We're not the highways authority, so what level of risk is it to us as an authority? Because I understand we've had issues around valuations of like other assets in the past. I think that was resolved. So to me, is this more something that's directed towards county council as opposed to the district council?
Sorry, Mark, can I ask you to your mic? Thank you.
Yeah. So the issue came to light from a highways authority, so it was a county council, so you're exactly correct. But you do hold £5 million worth of infrastructure assets yourself, and I'd have to defer to Mark to the categorisation of what they are, because they're not set out individually in the accounts, and I can't remember from last year's audit, if I'm honest, because that's a long time ago. But there are a relatively big number of district councils who are not highways authorities, who don't own pavements and roads, who do hold these assets. So it is an issue because the accounting concept is exactly the same. In my head, the easiest way to explain it was by way of a pavement, although I totally appreciate that they're not your assets.
So I guess from what you're saying on page 5 or 15 of the pack, where it says depreciation on highways infrastructure, highways shouldn't be there, it should be just on infrastructure. Yeah.
Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. It's down the same lines. I know we don't have many pavements, but we do have car parks. Does this include car parks? So what is the 5? We've got £5 million worth. What are they?
I'll give you the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's things like sewage treatment works are classified as infrastructure. We have the and key around the port. That's an infrastructure asset. We also have fair amounts of sorry, it's things like sewage treatment works. We have a number of sewage treatment works which have been modified and updated over the years. So we obviously changed those values. We have the port quay and land around the port, which is also classified as infrastructure, and we have a number of things that we've done to various parts of the environmental improvements to pavements and things that we've done over the years. So there's a combination of things. We can obviously give you a better list in due course, but it's those type of things. But from our analysis of what the standard says and the work that we've carried out to date, we have no particular issues with what we think the impact of this will be on the accounts.
If I can come back. So does that include the public rights of way that we own?
No.
We don't own many, but we do.
No.
So would it be useful if the committee gets a list of this so we can know what we're actually talking about?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll give you a list of those.
Thanks.
Any further questions?
You made reference to the fact about coming in November, making sure our resources were ready. We know from previous years that you've had issues with resourcing. Are you confident you'll be able to start on the suggested date?
We did have some resourcing issues a number of years ago, so 2 years ago, and we are fully resourced and ready to go from the 1st of November in the allocated timeframe.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Yeah.
And just in relation to the comment about Mark's assistant, we have collared some time for him to be available because he's only gone to one of our neighbouring councils. So he has kindly, and they have kindly agreed that he can be part of the team, and we've collared some days, which we'll just need to schedule in with you to make sure we get best use of that.
Okay, there are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to note the report and for the report to be presented to Cabinet. Please raise your hands if you agree to note the report. Thank you, members. Agenda item 6 is the Statement of Accounts 2021-2022. I now call upon Mark Saunders, Chief Accountant, to introduce the report. I've missed agenda item number 5, haven't I? Have I?
No, number 5.
Hang on.
Statement is 6.
Yeah, are you done on 5? Yes. Are you ready for number 6, Mark?
I think, Chair.
Have I missed something?
No, you're absolutely fine. I think I don't think this audit report goes to Cabinet, the external audit plan. I think it just comes here. That was the clarification.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just all that.
Sorry for the confusion. I'm just reading my notes.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, agenda item number 6. Yes. Want to turn your microphone on, Mark?
It's just hysterical now, Maureen. It's gone. I'm in hysteria mode. This is the draft statement of accounts. This is what we normally bring to committee slightly earlier in the year, but obviously the last committee got cancelled due to circumstances beyond our control. So that's got rearranged till today. And what we do each year is bring to this committee the draft statements, which are obviously subject to external audit, just so that the members can get an understanding, a flavour of what the statements are and what's in them. We had a little training session beforehand just to go briefly through what the statements contain. At this point in time, there's nothing more for the committee in terms of approval other than just to note the accounts, because obviously these are the ones which we've supplied to Mark's team at Ernst & Young for them to carry out the audit, which, as you said, will commence in earnest in a couple of weeks' time. We have been working with Mark's team to try and get all the working papers and things ready for their start, so that they can hit the ground running when they do get onto the audit. There's a few more to be uploaded, but we've done quite a bit of that. But there's still some work to do on that. And obviously, we'll work closely with Mark's team during the next couple of months to ensure that the audit goes as smoothly as possible. The actual statements, in accordance with the regulations, were signed off by Peter on the 28th of July. The regulation state has to be done by the 31st of July. So that was done on time, and they were published on the website on the same day. So all that was done in accordance with that timescale. Mark's just detailed what their timescale, what the auditor's timescale are to complete the audit. And so that's what we're working towards, and hopefully by the 19th of December, if we are in a position to bring forward the final statements, we will be doing that. And it depends on where we are with the audit in terms of how far we get in terms of when they will actually get signed off by Mark and his team. Even if he produces an audit results report, there will be some things which need sorting out. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully we can meet that target. And that's what we're doing our best to ensure that we get there. And then in December, the December meeting, that is when the committee, after receiving the auditor's report, after approving the letter of representation, you will need to actually approve the final statement of accounts for publication. So at this stage, this is merely for information, just so that you know what's in the statements, just to get you ready for the December meeting, get you tuned up, ready, so you know what's in there, and then you'll be aware of anything which the auditor may wish to raise in their report, so that we're well informed by that stage. So on that note, Chairman, any members got any questions? Please to avoid them.
Could I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Miss Davis, can I have a seconder?
You must have been here at the training session before you can ask questions, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Booth.
You only just got in, Gavin. You just got in at the end. Is that why you did that?
Yeah, just a question regarding long-term investments, which I've lost the page now, I had it a few seconds ago. We've now got a sum against long-term investments. Does that relate to the investment that the council's done this year in the properties in Wisbech to give us an income of the 230,000?
Oh, you're hearing me. I thought I was deaf. I can't talk and at the same time. Now the long-term investments there, it's just over £4 million in the balance sheet.
Yeah.
That relates to two investments in property funds, which we took out right at the end of the year. Within the last 2 or 3 days of the year, we took those out. So they're showing at that value, and obviously that's the first time we've ventured into that territory. So it's obviously why there was nothing in last year's and this first one this year. So we'll see how that turns out.
Okay.
But obviously the long-term investment, because the expectation is that for property funds, then you need to be in there for a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
Usually up to 5 years as a minimum, in order to make sure that you benefit from the any potential rise in capital and the annual rental interest payments.
Yeah, okay, that's it's as I suspected. So obviously it's a new area. It's an area we need to consider around the risks around that and monitor it closely. Is my thoughts on that. The other thing is just about the Public Works Loan Board. I can't find the part in the pack now, but obviously we've got the investments. I understand one of those loans, I should say, is going to be coming up to maturity at some point in the next 5 or 6 years. So I just wonder if we ought to just list what they are and when the due dates are, because that'll probably need to be a bit more focus, I guess, nearer that end date, just as an observation for the accounts.
Obviously, we keep a very close eye on those two loans for the Public Works Loans Board, which we keep an eye on in terms of where the interest rate is going in terms of repayment of those, because at the moment it did the interest rate started going up. It's come back down again a little bit in the last day or two. Hopefully it can continue that way. But we have something very recently from our Treasury advisors to Link, just giving us the detailed breakdown of what the impact of the penalties are, as opposed to what the benefits are repaying that early. So then we make it, you can actually then see whether it's worth that investment. The biggest problem we've got at the moment is, of course, if we repay that, if it becomes viable to repay it, then we are going to need to, in terms of our capital program, we are going to need to take out new loans in the future. And at the moment, repaying one that much and taking that out at an equally high rate doesn't make an awful lot of sense at the moment. So it's that balance of the thing as well. So we keep both things under review with our advisors.
And you touched on the other point, it was just about interest rates. Obviously, we're having to keep a fairly close eye on that at the moment. I assume fairly, particularly for the short-term investments where we sort of buy bonds and the likes from banks and building societies. But what are our advisors telling us that they're expecting to happen? Because it seems to be all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, it is absolutely all over the place. But at the moment, they're still advising that the interest rate is likely to increase. It's just then when that will happen, when it will start sort of leveling out again. Their advice at the moment is to keep investments reasonably short till such time as the rates start settling down and you can plan a bit further ahead. But at the moment, the rates over 12 months isn't that different from the rates over a few months. So it's we're keeping things fairly short at the moment, between certainly up to 3 to 6 months, just so we can take advantage of anything which is likely to happen in the future. But that's what their advice is at the moment, and that's what we're doing. But those interest rates for that period of time have actually increased quite significantly since this time last year, where we were getting 0 point something %. We are now getting between 2 and 3% for them.
So what you're saying is we're not taking out any new investments with a 12-month period because we just don't know what volatility is like.
Yeah.
Short term, so it keeps our options open. Yeah.
And we've got to be certain, because we've now invested with that with those 2 property funds, we've invested quite a bit of money there. We've got to tie that in with what our cash flow requirements are and what we think is going to happen over the next 12 months. Because even though we've got a reasonable amount of cash in the bank at the moment, there were things going to be happening which will drain that amount of cash, because obviously we've got big projects coming up which will require quite a bit of expenditure coming out. So we've got to be certain that we can actually invest for that period of time. So it's all that is looked at quite regularly.
Yeah, of course.
I was looking at the report on COVID, and obviously we haven't heard that the government's going to give any more money, but all local authorities are obviously struggling because there's that gap. Do we have any idea of what the impact will be?
There are certain aspects of things which are going on at the moment which we can put a figure on. What we're in the process of doing at the moment is, as part of the budget setting process, is looking at the whole council finances and budget and how all that comes together. Because we can look at these individually and say, the pay award or likely pay award is going to have this impact. The impact on energy costs is going to be this, or the impact of this is going to be this. But those are in isolation. But you need to bring them all together to see what impact everything's happening on all the services, and we're literally in the process of doing that at the moment, and that will be ready. We're due to go to cabinet in December with the draft budget information, so we'll be doing a lot of work between now and then to see what impact that will have. But there will be a significant impact. There are some significant pressures out there, and not many of them are coming into the council. A lot of them are going out, which is unfortunate. And the rhetoric of the government is that there just won't be any more money for local government, or are part of the public sector anyway. Whether they reduce the amount, but if they keep the levels of funding as it was in the 21 spending review for the period, then that's going to effectively be a cut in the amount you get, because of inflation's going up, up towards 10% odd. The pay awards are going significantly higher than what we were budgeting for. And if we get no more additional resources from the government, whatever form that may take, then that's going to be quite a challenge for all local authorities, not just ourselves.
Any other comments, members? No. There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to note the content of Statement of Accounts for 2020, 21, 22. Please raise your hands if you agree to note the Statement of Accounts. Thank you, members. Agenda item 7 is the annual governance statement 21-22. I now call upon Kathy, Internal Audit Manager, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, can you switch your mic off? Thank you. So agenda item 7 of your agenda packs on page 185 is the annual governance statement. So the annual governance statement accompanies the statement of accounts, and it provides an annual review of the council's governance arrangements. So SIPFA and SOLIS, which is the Society for Local Authority Chief Executives, produced guidance on how we should assess our governance arrangements and how we should produce our annual governance statement. So this year I have reviewed the format of the annual governance statement to hopefully make it a bit more readable and a bit easier for the public to understand. I'm afraid we can't do that with the statements, but we can at least try with the governance, the annual governance statement that comes with it. So the annual governance statement includes a scope of responsibility of the AGS, a definition of corporate governance, the governance of the framework we have here within the authority, the local code of governance and all of the principles of good governance, the roles and responsibilities of everybody within the authority, other reviews and assurance mechanisms that we incorporate into this review, the review of effectiveness against each of the principles. So there are 8 principles. So there's a section within the report now that includes a review of each of those areas. And it also includes areas for further improvement and the final conclusion within there. So the document will be signed off by the leader, the chief executive and the section 151 officer. And a draft has already been published out for public consultation. So it went out with the statement of accounts for 30 days, and similarly, no comments have been received on it. But internal comments have come back in about people appreciating that it has reduced in length. I think previously it was about 20 pages and we're now down to about 11 pages. So it is a bit more readable. It will also be audited by our external auditors as part of the accounts process. And hopefully you've had a chance to have a look and review that document. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Kathy. Could I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Benny, seconder. Coming, Councillor Booth, thank you. And now open the item for discussion. Councillor Booth.
Obviously, you've made the change this year. Have you based this upon best practice elsewhere? What's been the driver for these changes?
I think the main driver, I mean, the annual governance statement hasn't been reviewed for a number of years. It's followed the same format that we've had for 5, 6, 7 years or more. And it's not the easiest document in the world to digest. Hence why there's a bit more pictorial representation in there to perhaps try and give it a bit more meaning to people so they can understand what we're actually trying to achieve. I mean, one of the main drivers for doing it, I mean, obviously, we're all aware of a lot of issues surrounding governance in not just local authorities, but significant failures that have come across from various other organisations that, as local authorities, we pick them up through things like the Tony Redmond review, the review, Department for Levelling Up and Communities are also getting a bit more into local authority governance. And I think a lot of it's about ensuring that what we're doing and what we're producing as an authority is meeting with what our requirements are. There is standard practice out there. I mean, I've obviously done quite a lot of benchmarking with other authorities as well, which helped me to form how I thought this document should look or could look, and to try and make it a bit more simplistic, but while still ensuring that it meets the needs of what we are trying to produce as an authority.
That's all to be commended on trying to make sure it is more user friendly for particularly the members of the public out there. One thing I did note is page 193. We talk about the fact council's got a consultation strategy. I think it's been quite a number of years since that's been reviewed by members. I wonder if that's something we ought to highlight as a committee, because I'm not sure we're actually following that strategy in all examples now, particularly when I think of engagement with parish and town councils. I think that's deteriorated over the years. So I think that's probably something we ought to highlight, that is probably warrant a review going forward.
I mean, that's something that I can incorporate into this in the areas for further improvement. So yeah, I've made a note of that and we'll try and add that in as well, moving forwards.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Members? No. There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is the Audit and Risk Management Committee to approve the annual governance statement 2020-21. Please raise your hands if you approve the statement and its inclusion in the council's published statement of accounts 21-22. Thank you, members. Agenda item 8 is the corporate risk register review. I now call upon Peter Catchpole, Corporate Director, Section 151 Officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for me shooting out when Mark was speaking. It wasn't that I didn't believe what he was saying. I just had a bit of a sneezing fit. I think, again, this is, I think I'm the third in line to present this. I think Stephen Beecher owns and produces this document. He's off today. Sam Anthony, who used to do it, has just contracted COVID and is at home. So I'm not planning to run through this in great detail. It's a format that you're very familiar with, those of you on the committee. It's regularly reviewed by the Corporate Risk Management Group and the Corporate Management Team. Mitigating actions and progress have been updated as agreed at previous meetings. The changes are all highlighted in green, and there have been some changes because I think the environment has changed quite a lot with some of the things that we've talked about earlier. So I will throw it open really, and I'll try my best to answer any questions that you may have. But that's all I want to say, Chair, at this point in time. Thank you.
Could I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Booth, a seconder. Councillor Tierney, thank you. I open this item for discussion. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, it's good to see that looks like it's had a fairly extensive review. I was going to ask Sam if she was here, all the changes I'd suggested back in March have been implemented, but I'd say they probably have based on the number of changes. What it does highlight is where we put these changes in, we're not showing what the previous position was in the risks and the likelihood. One assumes we're moving in the correct position, i.e. decreasing the risk and likelihood. But for example, I think there's one around inflation risk. Well, that probably made the situation worse. So has that actually increased the prevalence of that risk and the potential for it to occur? So it's probably more of a formatting when we do make those changes, maybe some way of showing what the previous risk scores were, because then we can just, we've got a sense check of what direction we're moving.
I think that's a good point. I think are you talking about the way we score the risks, the summary table? Because I think that's quite subjective anyway, but I certainly don't disagree with what you're saying. And a lot of the areas, the narrative is added in green. We don't always take a lot out, but I think that you're talking about the scoring framework, which, as I said, is discussed at great detail. And actually, I think that's a good point, is you want to know whether things have gone up or down. So I'll take that on board. Yes. Thank you, Councillor Booth.
Thank you.
Any other comments, members? No. Okay.
Yeah, so just on that point about inflation, and page 211, we talk about the cost of living and energy crisis. And one of the issues I'm aware of from councils elsewhere is, for example, that energy contracts aren't necessarily fixed and therefore they're more susceptible to the energy increases. Now, I know we were doing a review, particularly I think it's a street lighting energy costs last year. Did we manage to negotiate a fixed contract at that time before, all the sort of massive increases occurred this year? Or are we on variable rate and therefore at the will of the markets?
Councillor Booth, I don't actually know the answer to that question, and I think it is a good question. I think, yeah. Yeah.
In the next 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we are on a deal at the moment, but it is imminent for renewal in the next 12 months, I think. So yeah.
So in which case we're not likely to get a new fixed rate and we're going to be susceptible to these increases.
Well, I don't know what deal's going to be on offer, but we'll try our best, obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you look at what's available in the domestic, I suspect fixed rates aren't available for commercial, and I think working with one of the village halls that I do, we only just managed to get fixed rate before everything sort of started to increase. Now, obviously, it's only variable rates available as well.
But I think these are not up for renewal imminently. We've got, we'll just have to see what happens. So I think it's within the next 12 months is my recollection.
So the street lighting contract was separate to the main contract.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Councillor French, do you want to come in?
No, I was just going to say with the street lights, I do believe it is another 12 months to go. It was set obviously before this started. I mean, if it's anything like county councils, think that dimming them down again.
Councillor Wicks?
Yeah, on from street lighting, the infrastructure for the buildings that Fenland own and run. Again, we've got the energy costs. Are we on a contract that was not due for renewal until the foreseeable future? Right.
We actually go through best both, best view, and which way round it is, but once leaving that lines, that trans.
Okay. Yeah. So
Fortunately, though, does by those energy cost cards, which actually less no longer operate there. So our energy cost into what we consume ourselves for our own buildings is minor in the context of the overall impact on our building.
okay.
Our buildings, but like these costs.
Thank you very much.
Councillor French?
Yeah, leading on from that, can I suggest that we have an update to our next meeting with regard to energies when the contracts are coming up for renewal?
Councillor Booth?
Yeah, just on the point about diesel, I think it's Peterborough City Council moving all their refuse lorries over to like a hybrid oil type solution. Is that something we're looking at? I think they were expecting to sort of save about half the money that they're spending on diesel, but it's just something to suggest. They've obviously trialled it, I think, over the last 6 months or so. It's something we've been made aware of North Level Drainage Board, because obviously we're having to look at how we run the main sort of engines and the likes.
Sorry, wouldn't that require spending money on modifying the dust cots and things?
Yeah, there's a capital investment, but actually in the longer term, I think they're expecting to reduce it.
I think members of Cabinet will be aware that we just recently bought the diesel contract to Cabinet, and we got a really good deal again through the framework. So I'm certainly not aware that we're looking at these other options, but I think we need to keep everything on the table, to be fair.
We have a rolling program of replacing the vehicles after so many years. So it's not an extensive replacement thing. It's only perhaps 1, 2 a year. So it will, you know, we can check with what the options are.
Well, at least aren't they for a set period of years, aren't they, the vehicles?
Now we tend to move away from leasing the last few years because of the interest rates have been so low. It's been easy to finance it ourselves from our own resources. That's what we tend to do. Still have a few on lease from the older ones, but certainly the most recent ones, the last few years have been financed by ourselves. Obviously, if that situation changes, then we can revert to a different option. That's looked at the time that the refuge vehicle is required in terms of what the best way to finance that is. And that's one of the things that we look at in terms of the options relating to that.
Okay.
Any other questions, members? No. There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to note and agree the corporate risk register review. Please raise your hands if you agree to recommendation. Thank you, members. Agenda item 9 is the Internal Audit Plan 2022-23, the progress report. I now call upon Kathy, Internal Audit Manager, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So the internal audit plan for 22-23 was approved in March earlier this year, and this document on page 231 of your agenda packs provides the committee with an update on progress made against that plan for the first quarter of this year. So section 2.4 of the reports show the audits that have been completed at the end of quarter 1. And section 2.5 shows the audits that were currently underway at that point. Section 2.6 details other work that the internal team have been working on or involved with. Appendix A, which is on page 235, details the results of those completed audits, which also includes a description of the audit undertaken, the overall opinion, the number and type of recommendations, and a description of those. And Appendix B details progress made on implementation of recommendations over the last 2 years. Obviously, they don't include any recommendations from this current year, as none of which were due at the point of the first quarter. So these recommendations are being monitored by the internal audit team on a quarterly basis, and updates are also being provided to management team as well now. So as at the end of quarter 1, there was 1 high risk recommendation and 4 medium risk recommendations that were overdue. I can confirm that the additional oversight of management team has been successful, and 3 of those overdue recommendations are no longer overdue. Obviously, if this related to quarter 1, there's a little bit of a time lag, the information that you've got in front of you. And I think the only ones that are outstanding are medium risk recommendations. I think there's only 2 of which, one of which is to do with the business unit lettings policy, which is underway, and that is being monitored by obviously the new manager in place in property. And the audit team are monitoring and following up closely on that audit to make sure that they're not slipping. They are at the forefront. I think a lot it's more just a resourcing issue, so they are being maintained and monitored on that. But just so you're aware, the sharing the information with management team has actually been very successful in ensuring that we have a lot fewer overdue recommendations than we've previously had. So that's been a very successful process. So I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any on the audit progress report for quarter 1.
Thank you, Kathy. Can I propose it for this report, please? Councillor Mr Davis, a seconder. Councillor Mrs French. I'll now open this item for discussion. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thanks for presenting this. I mean, obviously, it's still early days as far as the work is concerned, being only the first quarter. What I just want to get a better understanding of is this discussion we've been having for some time around the exec summaries. Now, I notice we've got this sort of new format report. Is this what we're proposing to bring forward? Because I'm still not sure it gives enough detail from my perspective of what the issues are around all the different recommendations and findings. So that's why I would still like to see, effectively an executive summary circulated to members of this committee, so we know, what the audit findings are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is still striking the balance between providing the committee with enough information without providing it with too much operational detail that's being dealt with by management team. So at the moment it's trying to strike that balance between the two. I think it's probably a discussion for the committee to have whether or not the committee generally feels there's enough information here, or if it does require more information than we've got in there. Because obviously I've tried to expand it, and sort of the last 3 progress reports I've tried to put a bit more detail in here and there. And again, it is that striking that balance between operational and oversight, and providing the additional information on the recommendations and how progress is being made on those recommendations is an addition that we're giving to the committee as well, to hopefully try and provide some of that assurance that we're not just making recommendations and parking them, but the organisation is actually dealing with those recommendations, which I think you can probably see from the report now. So, I mean, whether or not the committee wishes to have discussion about if they want more information, probably the next move on those.
Yeah, I guess my concern is, for example, if we don't quantify what the extent of the risk is. So we've got this issue around the formal agreement between FDC and Lincolnshire on the Cross Keys Marina. What's the potential liability and quantifiable risk to the council in relation to that? I understand obviously there's issues about it, the operation of it as well. So is it, for example, who's responsible for health and safety risks there as well? Who's responsible for the port navigation there? That type of thing. We know there's a risk, but what does it entail? Similarly, on the next one down, talks about IR35 regulations. Well, it doesn't tell us what those what element of those regulations hasn't been sort of adequately addressed. So what's the concern there? So it's still, to me, at quite a high level, and it doesn't really quantify the issue towards this council. So that's my concern. That's why I feel exec summaries, normally you have that type of information, and it gives a bit more quantifiable information, and gives, as the critical friend here, that the role we're supposed to be playing. I think that's what we should be looking at, and we can have more thorough discussions around it.
I think from my point of view, the issue with that would be putting that level of detail in the public domain. I think I appreciate members of the audit committee might wish to see that, but some of that information we wouldn't wish to put out into the public domain, because obviously all of these papers are public reports, and detailing issues around IR35 may not necessarily be something that we would want to put into that public domain. So this is about that balance, and whether there is an alternative solution around providing the audit committee with information outside of the public report would probably have to be something we'd consider. But in terms of what we wish to put into the public domain, I think that's where we just need to be a little bit cautious.
Yeah, for me, I feel if I'm to fulfill my role as critical friend here, I don't have enough information to sort of say that I've got the assurance that we've got everything in hand, because if it's not allowed to be put in the public domain, how am I supposed to know what's happening? And that's a key element of the role of this committee, is around the assurance it provides to the operation of this council.
So I think that's probably something that we need to take away then and have a further discussion about. So yeah, Peter and I will have a discussion about that and what we can provide. I mean, it's not that we don't wish to give you the information, but it's just striking that balance between what is necessary to complete your function. And, obviously, we want you to be able to complete your roles to the best of your ability and doing that. And it's just how we provide that level of detail to you without exposing ourselves potentially in a way that we wouldn't want to. Yeah.
Councillor French.
Forgot my question. Yeah, with regards to the independent member, are we any further forward looking for an independent? I know it's not due until December, but have you actually gone out there and started looking?
we know of someone.
Yes, well, so we do have a potential candidate who is somebody who has expressed an interest. The process we're at the moment, I'm still waiting for some further guidance from SIPFA, which should have been released in June, then September, and I still haven't had it yet. And we're now in the middle of October. So hopefully as soon as we get that, then we can move a step forwards with our analysing the skills of the committee to properly create a job description for this. But I do have somebody who, like I say, has expressed an interest in wanting to do the job. They're local, so hopefully they won't get snapped up by too many other local authorities while we're waiting to do that. But I say bring a report back to the committee in December.
I do know county were looking for an independent person as well, so we really want to crack on before we lose local people.
Any other comments, councillor Booth?
Just on that, can we not sort of use the guidance that's available from like the conduct committee and sort of as a baseline to try and get someone appointed? Because obviously that sets down, you know, criteria you're supposed to go through. Would that not be sensible to follow something like that? I know it's a different arena, but it's still got guidance for appointing independent people, isn't it?
Yeah, the actual process isn't necessarily the issue. It's just ensuring that we get the right job description in place. That we were looking for a bit of SIPFA guidance to strengthen that, to make sure that we get the right person. But having said that, the person who is interested would meet all that criteria anyway. So it is something, it does need to come back to committee and it does need to go to council before we can start recruiting. So regardless of which methodology we use, obviously we would always use internal information that we have from conduct committee as well. And obviously looking through the independent remuneration panel to support the level of fee that we would wish to apply for this post.
Any other comments, members? No. No further speakers, therefore the Audit and Risk Management Committee are asked to note the report. Please raise your hand to agree to note this report. Thank you, members. Agenda item 10 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee work plan. It is as in your pack. Anyone's got any questions? No? Okay.
Just
Sorry,
say it's
Councillor
good,
Biggs.
just good to have this, you know, what's coming up. So, yeah, so, yeah, well done, officers.
Thank you. So the work plan is noted for information. Agenda item 11 is items of topical interest. I'm going to pass you over to Peter.
Thank you. I have 3 items, I think, of topical interest. The first, I think Mark alluded to in the training was, and I'll just highlight the letter that the auditors have sent to us to say that we're not going to be ready by the 30th September, which we all know. So that letter did come to myself. So Mark Hodgson from Ernst Young has let us know that, but we already knew that because we knew from the timetable of the audit, but that is a statutory requirement and that will go on our website, I believe, Mark. So we will do that. The second issue is, you'll remember that we talked about the appointment of auditors going forward, and that has moved on apace. The procurement from the PSAA has happened, and they're now in a consultation phase for who our auditors are going to be. But the interesting thing about that procurement is, and the difference between England and England don't have an auditor of last resort, so we are completely dependent on the commercial market for the auditors. So what this procurement is telling us, and we'll all know about audit fees, is that we should expect about 150% increase for audit fees going forward. Now, just to put that in perspective, if ours is around 40,000, that would mean our new rate would be 100,000. And that's to do, I talked earlier of all the regulations, things that have changed. So an awful lot that the auditors have to do now, and we're all aware of the problems in the market. So that's the sort of level we're looking at. We're still going through the consultation period. I would say I have had a letter telling us who our auditors are likely to be, but I'm told I can't sort of say that until after the consultation period. But it will not be a surprise. There were only 6 firms that did come in the procurement, and they're firms that I don't think will be unfamiliar to all of you. So we will know, and I will tell the committee at December who our auditors are, but just to be prepared that fees are increasing. And the third and final piece of news is not such good news, because we've lost Neil, as you know, and we're looking at a replacement for that. But also the lady on my left is leaving. So Kathy is going to a great opportunity. She likes the audit committee so much, she's going to an organisation that has 4 audit committees. So I'd just like to put on record my thanks to Kathy and all her support, but we'll be looking at some options around how we provide that internal audit going forward. And you'll also be aware that we have to do an external review of internal audit anyway. So I'm hoping to combine those and also with some options, because it's very difficult to do like recruitments at the moment. So that was it, Chair. Thank you very much.
And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank all the work that Kathy's done for us. Thank you. Has anyone got any comments? Any questions? Gavin?
Made it simple to understand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, much appreciated.
Yeah, I want to reiterate, I think it's a pity you're going, but obviously, you've got to think about your own professional career and that. But yeah, I'd like to sort of say thank you for everything that you actually implemented that we've requested. I know sometimes it's been probably at my behest a lot of the time, but yeah, personal note of thanks.
Again, as Gavin said, we wish you well in your new position. I realise it is a super step for you, so well done, and thank you for what you have done since we've been on this committee.
I would just like to say thank you all. It's through my time I've worked with a couple of audit committees here, and it's obviously with all of your support that I know I can do this moving forward. So thank you for the challenges. I've enjoyed the challenge.
Okay, so there's nothing else. Close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.